Most leaders don't get stuck because they lack skill. Instead, they get stuck because they don't understand who they are at the core of their identity and purpose. And this has ramifications at home and work. Today, Rob Stout is talking to Jeremiah Shaw, who serves as a leadership coach, consultant, and executive mentor focused on helping leaders and teams gain clarity and take intentional action in their organizations. Jeremiah holds a master's degree in organizational and global leadership and is an associate certified coach through the International Coaching Federation. He's the founder of Grovity Leadership, which helps train leaders, teams, and organizations through executive coaching, team coaching, organizational training, and strategic planning. The next stage helps men live lives of purpose, born out of their identity as men created in God's image. The next stage is available in both video and audio formats like Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and more. For more information about Rob Stout or the Next Stage team, visit sherpaunlimited.com/podcast. For any resources mentioned in today's program, be sure to check out the show notes, which are embedded in this episode. Also, please take a moment to give this podcast a 5-star rating, a like, and a share to your friends on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And be sure to hit that subscribe button. The Next Stage podcast for men is recorded in Erie, Colorado, and produced by Christopher Mann at the Re-Sermon Studio in Fort Wayne, Indiana. For more information, visit resermon.com. Whether you are at the gym, on a flight, driving to an appointment, or just chilling out, this podcast is a resource to help men get to the next level. Welcome to the Next Stage. Does your sermon only get one squeeze? There's probably more juice in that sermon. Re-Sermon repurposes sermon content for optimal ministry impact. Learn more at resermon.com or email hello@resermon.com.
Men, welcome to the Next Stage. This is Rob Stout. I'm excited to have with us Jeremiah Shaw of Grovity, and we're going to let him explain exactly what that name means because he made that word up, but it's really cool in what he does. But Jeremiah works with executives and management teams, and he's an excellent guest to have with us today because we're talking about why do men, especially leaders, and strong teams get stuck, and what happens. How do they get unstuck in what they're doing? So, Jeremiah, before we go into the work that you do with leaders and executives, what first drew you to this whole coaching space, and what made you realize that this was a place where you wanted to be and really fulfill your mission in life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think like with every man, if you really reflect back, like how did I end up where I'm at?
Yeah,
the story kind of starts with your father in some sense, whether that's good or bad. My story it's positive. My dad was a marriage family therapist, ended up going on working with men in midlife crisis. Obviously, a lot of those high performing men. And I thought that work was interesting. Then through about the last 20 years, managing teams, my favorite part was helping people kind of unlock, hey, I have more potential than I thought. Kind of really challenging their belief system, and just really pushing them forward in that. So when I found out there's a way to do this full time, and I didn't have to worry about the therapy. Originally, I was going to go into therapy, and then I recognized I don't want to spend all day every day talking about people's past and trauma. I want to figure out how do we help people move forward and create the life they really want to create and unlock that with people. And when I figured out I can make a career out of this and do this full time, I jumped right in.
Yeah, that's great. And just a little bit of background for those who don't know, give us a little bit of a walkthrough of your background with Young Life, which is an incredible organization, and then in the business world, and kind of how you navigated through grad school and then landed in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, which is a beautiful place to be, by the way.
Yeah, born and raised in Oklahoma City. So we know two things, whether you're in the industries or not. One is we know everything about tornadoes and weather.
You do.
The second is oil and gas, right? So coming out of college, I thought I was going to go into oil and gas after I decided not to go into psychology and therapy. And my third interview, they offered me the job at an oil and gas company on the third floor, showed me my cubicle, and I said, I'm not going to make it here. I'm going to jump out of that window in 2 weeks right there. And so at that point, my fiance and I were volunteering with Young Life, which is a Christian nonprofit who really mentors and disciples anywhere from middle school, high school to college kids.
Love young
And we
life.
really enjoyed that. Yeah. And they came and said, "Hey, what do you think about working with us?" And I said, and as an idealist and somebody who's always been kind of purpose first, I said, "Let's do that." Which is funny because I promised my wife I'm never going into ministry, probably a year prior to that.
Right.
And of course, God always has other plans and says, "Hey, you're going to do this." And I was like, okay. So did that for almost 7 years. Really enjoyed it. Contribute a lot of my wife and I, 17 years of marriage this year. We've been dating ever since. We've had a lot of fun. Dated for 3 years, so almost 20 years actually this summer. And that was Young Life was a big factor in really falling in love with leadership, because we couldn't tell our volunteers what to do. You really had to cast the vision, bring them along, really develop them and train them, kind of meet them where they were as we did that ministry. And then with that, learned how to fundraise, met with donors, things like that. So that kind of really sharpened a lot of the professional things that I can kind of reflect back on and say, oh, I use that skill set today.
Yeah.
From there, I went into sales management. That's where I really figured out, hey, sales is pretty easy. Like if you can sell a vision of a nonprofit and have people partner with you financially for that, you can typically sell most things. Pretty quickly got bored with that. My favorite part of that was just developing the team members on the team.
Yeah.
And that's really where I started seeing those things. From there, I jumped into managing a leadership development firm and coaching firm. That was a national firm, did that for about 6.5 years. And about 2.5 years ago said, hey, how do I want to do this? What is my vision of this? And I stepped out of there, started Grovity about 2 years ago. And like you said, the name, we did make it up. I have a business partner. He and I really wrestle. We say, hey, who do we want to be? Right? How do we want to do this? And so we started with our values of like, well, these are the values we want to hold. And we said, what represents that? I actually used to be in the commercial tree industry. And so if you have any Texas listeners, the Arlington, Texas Ranger Stadium, I've touched every tree there. That was one of the projects we got to work on. So I love trees. My grandfather had a tree farm. So this idea that, man, obviously Steamboat, Colorado, you're in Colorado, like we do a lot of hiking. And so this idea of like, how do we want to feel? What do we want our brand to be? And so we kind of have this feeling and vision and picture of our brand before we could come up with a name. And so we said, man, what it feels like is grove, like this grove of trees. You're out, the sun's hot, the wind's blowing, like you just want a place to sit down, take a drink of water, recap on where we're at, kind of take inventory on the map, figure out where we're going next, and usually look for a grove, some shade, right? So we said, man, that's what it feels like. But there wasn't a word that kind of captured that along with that. So then we figured out, oh, when you add the word ity, the suffix of, it means becoming like. So this idea of to become like the grove, this action-oriented idea. So that's kind of the past and present of how we ended up here.
Love it. I love it. So yeah, the idea of a grove, and I love that. I'm sure that takes itself into what you're doing with leaders and with executives as well, and what they're creating in their spaces of work. When a leader comes to Grovity, where, in your experience, where are they usually stuck? By that, I mean, maybe it's something they see on the surface, like, strategy or alignment, or, this person's a problem versus what's really going on. But where do you see that they're stuck as a leader?
Yeah, there's usually two kind of approaches. One is kind of this remedial idea of like, this is so broken, the pain is so strong, I need help. The other side is kind of this performance psychology. So we kind of live in this world of performance psychologists, right? So what happens is people are proactive saying, okay, it's not necessarily broken, the pain's not there, but I feel like there's something left on the table. I feel like we have more as an organization and as an executive team. And so that's where they start thinking through, right? And the root cause of that is kind of similar, because they're both saying something's not right. There's more here. And how do we get that out of? So then we bring those together, whether it's remedial or proactive. A lot of those symptoms that drive them here are, hey, the future's kind of unclear. It feels a little foggy. What are we not thinking about, right? We only know what we know, and a lot of leaders are aware of that. And then the hard symptoms are typically the same, right? They feel like they're always in reactionary mode. Like the stress is really high. They're trying to figure out how to mitigate that. Maybe they have high turnover with their executive team and those right underneath them. Relationship management, always conflict, or they feel like they sit in a room, ask the question. How many leaders know this story, right? They ask the question, what's next? What do you all think of this? And everyone's like, yep, yeah, boss, that's great, right? There's this nightmare of, oh my gosh, I've created a table of yes people.
Right.
And so the lack of conflict is just as bad as unhealthy conflict. And so those are usually areas that people call us for of, hey, things are unclear, we're stressed out, we're reactionary, we need to be more strategic. Like we just need help and we don't know how to have the conversation.
Yeah. And so I'm assuming a lot of that has to do with the leader himself. So I call you, I'm like, Jeremiah, get here, and you race over, make an appointment, whatever. A lot of it has to do with the leader being unaware of themselves, kind of how they show up around their organization, right? Maybe personal insecurity or being threatened by others, or maybe imposter syndrome. How have you seen that type of thing? Like, as a leader, I need to become more self-aware in what I'm doing in my organization.
Yeah. Leadership always starts at the top, right? With that individual, even if we end up working with a team. And so that's usually the first place we try to start. Unfortunately, a lot of leaders say, oh, I need the good stuff for my team. I want to invest in them. And the question is, well, what about you? Well, I don't have time or whatever it is. And it's usually rooted kind of in that ego idea. But when we get in and we start getting involved with them, we always push that individual to say, hey, let's do some exploration. When I was managing a sales team, the general manager at the organization I was at, brilliant man within the industry. He came up through this industry, 25 years of knowledge, knew everybody, had all the relationships, all these things. But where he was getting stuck, he had so much frustration with the team. And it was all rooted in this idea that he knew all the answers. And we all knew that he didn't, right? Because nobody does. And so in these meetings, we're like, would you listen to us? Like, we have the answer. And not me, but like, let's figure this out as a team and collaborate on this. And his downfall really was this hold on to ego, feeling like he had to have all the answers, which no fault of his own. It's kind of how we're raised and how leaders are created these days. If you look at the public education system of who has the right answer, right? Not, hey, who has the best question?
Yeah. No, I love that. And what Sherpa does, what the next stage does, is help men live lives of purpose born out of their identity as men created in God's image. And instead of chasing success kind of over here, for those who are watching on YouTube, I got my left hand up. For those of you who are listening, just picture far away. Success is what we chase, but really purpose is where it comes out of. And really purpose is born out of identity, and identity is anchored in our Creator. Now, as a follower of Christ for years, I've struggled with that. I wrestled with that. I've been a pilgrim in that. But not every man is there either. And this podcast is not just for men of faith, but for all men. As we said in the beginning, most leaders don't get stuck because of their lack of skill. They get stuck because they don't understand who they are and their personhood, their identity, and their purpose. Do you agree with that? And how have you seen that at different times at work in particular? The idea of purpose being born out of identity instead of chasing success.
Well, you see it all the time, and so many times we make things more complex than they need to be. And a lot of what we do is just helping leaders bring it back to the basics. That's why I love coaching. Our team really focuses on, if you look at athletes, right? Regardless if you're starting out, I live in, so Steamboat Springs actually produces more Winter Olympians than in any other place in the U.S. And so it's a very performance-driven culture. So whether you're in 6th grade starting out on a ski jump, you have a coach. Whether you're a 3-time Olympian, you have a coach. And so it's this idea of being able to come back and figure out, okay, how do I have somebody in my life holding up the mirror saying, keep it simple? And one of the philosophies that we use is, how are you doing and how are you being? And in the corporate world, a lot of times we focus on the doing, this quarter's goals, right? We sell this product and we want to maybe diversify into these markets, all these things. Pretty soon things get so convoluted and complex that we just can't even get out of our own heads. And then all of a sudden we forgot, why did we start doing this? What do we enjoy about it? Oh, who am I being in this moment? Which is the purpose question, which is how am I operating? And that is what we're really driving to, is balancing those things back out. Doing's important, right? But false identity oftentimes lives in the successes that we find in the doing.
Yeah.
And when we start telling ourselves like, hey, I'm pretty good at this, our ego grows. Or when we experience failure after failure, we start saying, oh, I can't do this.
Right.
And you start seeing these mental blocks and these stuck moments, right? So coaches get to come in and help people get unstuck by saying, what do you believe about this? What's your mental model around this? Who do you want to be in this? Because when we can disconnect our identity from just the success or the failures and the doing, we actually see higher performance, because we come back to what you're talking about, the identity. Okay, who do you want to be? Why do you want to be that way? Well, for you and for me, we're believers in Christ. And so we know that our Creator speaks our identity over us. Now, through that, we have these value sets that we get to help dictate and determine that also drive our actions.
Yeah.
But even you and I, Rob, throughout seasons of our life, we forget, oh, that's who holds our identity. Right. Or, hey, these are the values I want to abide by, because we negotiate along the ways, because we get trapped in the doing, right? Whether we're failing and the stress of failure is, forcing us or tempting us to negotiate in areas of our life or business. Or if we're winning and all of a sudden we're like, I don't need the team. I don't need anybody else. Like, I know who I am because I keep winning. Well, our identity's in the winning, not rooted in who we actually are.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have an example of, without giving away that person's, vocation or even where they're at in the world, where you have seen that type of coming alongside of them and addressing that issue and helping that leader grow?
Yeah. So I was working with, I've asked his permission. So there's a couple stories that I kind of come back to, and I've asked the client's permission to share these without sharing their name. But working with an executive at a technology company. And most of the time these days, by the way, we've kind of pivoted. We say we work with leaders that wear jeans and boots. Like, that's just the world I like to live in. But at this point, I was coaching an executive that worked at a technology company. He'd been there for 15 years. He had seen it through an IPO. You can imagine. Actually, they went from, like, I think he joined, it was a $130 million company. And then by the time he exited, that company is just under $3 billion. And so he had seen a lot, been through a lot, grown there, right? Grown his leadership skills. Well, if you grow up in one place or you always pick up some bad habits. And one of the, just like a lot of tech companies, one of the habits is, we work hard, we grunt it out. And that means being always plugged in, right? Because tech is tech, and the world we live in, whether you're in a blue collar industry or white collar industry, you usually have a computer and a cell phone. You're always connected. Yeah. And so flash forward, we'd been coaching for about a year. And we ended up coaching together for 2 years. He took a break. He's actually back now. But we'd been coaching about a year. And he shows up and he's just flustered. And I'm like, I said, okay, let's get centered, like turn the phones off, turn the notifications off. Is the office door closed? What's going on? Where you at? Let's do this catch up moment. And he just kind of paused and was like, man, it hit me last night. All the things we've been talking about, all the things we've been working on, I've been thinking through the lens of professional. And he said, I'm sitting on the bedroom floor last night. He had 4 kids. Sitting on the bedroom floor last night, about 8 p.m. And my daughter says, hey, Dad, hey, Dad, hey, Dad. And he said, it was like the 5th or 6th time she said, hey, Dad, that it registered and it hit me that, oh, she's talking to me. Oh, what am I doing? Well, I just missed. She was reading a book for bedtime. He just missed the entire book because she said, hey, Dad. He has this conscious moment of, hey, Dad, I'm on my email. I'm on my phone, laying on my kid's floor. And I just missed all of this. And he shows up and he's just like, I like, this is not who I am.
Yeah.
I can't keep working 70 plus hours a week, 80 hours a week, always plugged in. Like, this is not success. And so what do? We went back to identity and said, okay, because of the identity, what does success mean to you?
Yeah.
And so we started redefining that. And so that meant being present. Okay, define the word present. What does present mean for you and your kids? What does present mean for you and your spouse? Because they hadn't been on a date in years.
Mm.
And so how do you reclaim that as a husband? So let's start looking at all these identities. And then come full circle. Then you come back around and say, what does present look like at work? Because the reality is when you're not living healthy in one category of life, it's putting strain on all of them, including your professional life.
Right.
And so this tension he'd been living with at work, all of a sudden he said, I've put things on myself and expectations on myself that nobody else asked me to do. And so he said, okay, one of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to take my email off my phone. He said, no, nobody has that expectation of me. Hey, I'm going to put my phone up at 6 p.m. every night when I get home. Well, what did that do? He has more presence at home.
Mm.
So now all of a sudden he has this permission to say, I'm going to be fully present at work.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, because you just took the thing from where somebody presents. It's like walking into the doctor's office, like, hey, doctor, my head hurts. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, typically they don't start with that. They start with something else, because it's
Mhm.
all connected together. And the same thing in our worlds, our work life is connected to our team life, is connected to our family life, is connected to our soulish life. It's connected
Yeah.
with who we are. And so all of that is integrated. And we typically look at those things in different categories. Like, over here is work, over here's family, over here's, my hobbies, over here's my, personal life, whatever. It's all integrated. And I love how you did that. So for you, developing a leader is developing the whole thing, right?
Yeah. It's holistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. We usually start out, we have a kind of this holistic model, the 5 dimensions of health. And if you've ever cut open a tree and look at the growth rings, like, there's small, we actually overlaid it on that visual just so we can understand that, like, there are years where moisture is prevalent, like the tree grows a lot, right? Like the thick ring is that growth year. Then there's drought years, like the tree absorbed what it could absorb and it couldn't grow more than that.
Right.
And we look at, I'm a capitalist, but at the same time, you have to look at it realistically of, like, we have these quarterly expectations of, I want that tree ring to be this and this and this. The reality is we just have to accept what's available to us. And so what this holistic model does is it has people walk through kind of physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, right? I believe everybody's spiritual. And I work with a lot of secular leaders, a lot of Christian leaders.
Sure.
This model works for everybody. And then relational health. Hey, how are your relationships? And they kind of rate themselves in these categories. And what you see is, if they're like a 1 over here, it's putting strain on all the others.
Right.
So the goal is trying to figure out, hey, what is health? Let's define health. Because for me, I don't want to go run a marathon. Like, that's not my ideal set of health for me, but it might be somebody else's. Health is me waking up, going to run 26.2 miles or whatever they run. Right. But this dimension, they get to take control of that. For this gentleman I was coaching in health, relational health, he said, the man I want to be, so value set based on this identity, is a man of presence. A man at work, a present man at work, a present man with my kids, a present man with my spouse. That's the man I want to be.
Yeah.
So he starts anchoring his identity to that based on a model.
That's awesome. And so this guy obviously had a high set of strengths. He was an entrepreneur, right?
He was an executive at a tech company.
Okay.
This gentleman.
But he had a high set of probably command presence and leadership and all of that. How did that strength become an overplayed strength in the other areas of life to really create this issue? I mean, what was it?
Yeah, he was a winner. Like, he was this high performer, right? So we use a lot of different assessments. One of the assessments I used with him showed up that he wanted to win, like very high performer, right? And when you have somebody that high on that performance kind of metric or that marker, you start seeing the others area of their life, if they're not careful to define success holistically, not just professionally, the professional starts running away from them, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden success and the health of those around you starts degrading. And pretty soon you look up and you've said, well, I'll do this for a season. I know my physical health isn't there, but this is for a season because, we'll IPO or we'll cash out, or maybe this someday, right? And so we negotiate, right? And we make bad negotiations until the day we wake up and we're like, I'm 50 pounds overweight, haven't been on a date with my wife for 2 years, I'm not present with my kids, made a heck of a lot of money, I'm successful over here, but I don't feel successful.
Yeah.
This isn't the ladder I meant to climb.
Yeah.
It's not that the ladder was bad, and it's not that they shouldn't have climbed it, but they didn't do it consciously with intention.
And one of those, I think that probably the tool you're referring to, maybe not, is that the core strengths model?
The SDI.
Yeah, the SDI. Yeah. So we're both, just for our listeners, a little inside baseball. Jeremiah and I are both certified in core strengths. This is called SDI 2.0 by Crucial Learning. It's a really, really cool tool, right? It shows kind of your core strengths, but also how those can be overplayed. And also in that, where you go when you're in conflict and how to get back to equilibrium, and really 3 aspects of our personality, and they're, greater in each person, and really, really cool. So that's the tool you're referring to in particular. And that's great. Really, really cool. So, So give me another example of a time when a man, because really what this comes down into, this podcast is not just about leadership and work. And obviously that's the angle we're coming into it, but it's about how no matter if you're an executive, if you're an oil exec, if you're as you said, boots and jeans worker, which I'm assuming is oil and gas and more the construction industry, blue collar industry, or if you're just a guy, sitting in a cubicle, or you're a construction worker, whoever you are, about how you can live a life of purpose built out of your core identity. I mean, how have you gotten to that yourself, Jeremiah? How do you cultivate that every day as a man, as a dad, as a business owner? How does that work for you?
Yeah. When I was working for somebody, the idea was, am I honoring my boss? That's my success metric, right? Am I honoring my boss in this? Am I accomplishing and executing on what they want to accomplish in their life for the organization, for my team? And am I showing up for them, right? And so that was my purpose in that. Did I make money? Yes, we make money, right? That's one success metric, right? And too many times we put too much weight on that.
But it's an important one. If you're going bankrupt, you're
Yeah, you got to pay the bills. For me, when I chose to go into entrepreneurship and figure out, and I kind of went back and said, what's important to me? And for me, I've got two teenagers, and then my youngest is 10. And so we're talking 7.5 years are going to be gone, right? Or at least in probably 5 to 6 years, I'm not really involved in their day-to-day as much, right?
Right.
And so for me, like, starting 3 years ago, I was looking forward to the next 5 years. Okay, this is where my child's identity is going to be formed. And so how do I get to be a part of that as much as I can? So all of a sudden, I inputted that metric to success. So I said, okay, I'm going to choose over the next 5 years. Money is not my number one indicator for success. I'm going to move that way down. Say time. The flexibility and freedom for me is my indicator. So coming back and saying, okay, how do I just get to be present with my kids? And so for my father, he was a nonprofit leader. He was a therapist at this counseling agency. His metric was, am I available enough to coach all 3 of my boys' baseball teams? Am I available to go take my boys fishing in Colorado and camping? And he was successful in that. Now on the other side, he could have spent a lot more time at work. He didn't worry about that. He was fulfilled there. And so for me, it's the 2 lenses I look at is ultimately I want to make an impact on the world, whether that's my children. In this season, it's usually my children, right? And my neighbors. Someday it may be a larger swath, right? But we come back to, hey, am I fulfilled in this based on the identity I was given by the Creator? and who I want to be? Am I fulfilled in those kind of 5 dimensions of health in my relationships?
Yeah.
Financially, obviously we have to pay the bills, but for me, I'm like, the bills are paid. There's a lot of other metrics I'm trying to fulfill. Why? Because I want to make an impact. So those 2 lenses are, am I fulfilled? And what impact, how do I drive greater impact through my fulfillment? Because when we're aligned, and you know this, like when we're aligned with who we were created to be, what are my values? How am I going to accomplish it? What is the vision of who I want to be? What is the current mission in this season? When I align all those things, all of a sudden I have this purpose of like, it's very clear.
Yeah. This
is who I want to be. And I'm alive. I'm excited to get out of bed. I'm excited to go to the office. Like if we're waking up every day and just dredging through life, it's exhausting. There was a season in my life, I remember I was talking to a friend and he said, I just made a big shift. And it was because I woke up one morning, I was like, man, I'm living in black and white. And that's not who I'm called to be. I'm called to live in full color.
Yeah.
And I had negotiated on some areas in my life that I felt like because of my responsibilities over here, it wasn't obtainable. And I had this limited belief system where it's like, no, actually I can accomplish all those things, but I'm going to have to take some risks. And I'm going to have to make some hard calls and have hard conversations.
Right.
And so I was on the phone with him and he said, how are you doing? I just broke down because I was like, man, I have not been living right. Man, I've been living in the black and white and I haven't been living in full color and I'm ready to go. Let's go. And it was a big moment.
That's great. That's fantastic. So let me kind of bring this down to not just theory and examples, which are incredible, but practice. Like, what can a man do? And what have you seen in order to help him get unstuck, in order to live more of the way that we're talking about with purpose and identity born out of who they are? What are some things that you see that you would recommend to a man listening to the podcast today that he could do?
Yeah. One is don't go alone. Like, who's your community? If you don't have community, that's your fault. Yeah. Like, drop the ego, drop the pride, go find those friends and raise your hand and say, and be clear, here's what I want. Here's what I'm showing up in relationship and friendship. Especially these days, like you see men, like the expectations are high, right? Provide for the family financially, provide for the family emotionally, be available to run around with the kids, be available to provide for the spouse, like a lot of demand. Well, we end up getting the breadcrumbs.
Right.
And so many men feel guilty for saying, I can't take that guy's trip. When was the last time you had a solo day by yourself to contemplate, to think, to turn off the phone and just be? When was the last time you had a weekend with some really good men that are going to ask you really good questions?
Yeah.
That are going to get past the, hey, did you see the football game last night? They're going to get past that and say, what are you about? What are your values? A daily practice men can do today is what I call the shadow and the summit, which is getting back to what are your values? A lot of times our self-awareness is low. And if we just understand, like, what are we about? What are our values? Our family has a value system on the wall. Yesterday, my kids were arguing and I came in and said, hey, what's going on? This is taking my energy. This is taking your energy.
Right.
Shaw is, and we wrote them all out. A Shaw is this. A Shaw is this. And they get to reevaluate these when they turn 18. But when we're in our house, this is how we have conversations. So the number 5 is a Shaw is a contributor, not a consumer. And I said, this is consuming energy right now for all of us. And they're arguing over who left something out and who's going to put it up. And I said, what if you just contributed and picked it up and just took ownership, whether it's your problem or not? And so being able to come back and say, okay, what are my values? So that was one of our values. That's how we operate.
Give me those 5 values. So a Shaw.
Yeah.
Man,
yeah. So
those of you didn't catch that, Jeremiah's last name. Yeah. So what is a Shaw? Give me 5.
Yeah. So number 1, first and foremost, because everything's built on this in relationship, right? Is a Shaw is a truth teller at all costs. Like, the truth hurts, right? You don't just get to live in truth without pain. And so a Shaw is a truth teller. Right. And then secondly is a Shaw is an adventure seeker. Like we don't seek comfort. Like
Yeah.
we say yes to something fun. Like I always say, if you're not going to end up in jail or dead, it might be a good
Let's
idea.
give it a shot. Yeah.
Yeah, let's give it a shot. A Shaw's hospitable. Like
Love that.
we want a warm house that's a safe place for people when there's crisis.
Yeah.
Like they know they can knock on our door and show up. A Shaw's a learner and a grower, and we laugh at ourselves, right? Because you got to be stupid to figure something out, right? You got to feel silly a little bit. And then the last one is a Shaw's a contributor, not a consumer.
Yeah.
Because we live in a consumeristic society, consumeristic world, whether we're jumping from, well, I like the worship over here at this church, but the message over here at this church, or I like the hamburger at McDonald's over here, and I like this, or look at the ad popped up, I would look good in those jeans, Okay, how do we stop and just say, how am I going to contribute before I consume?
Yeah.
So if we're part of a group that's complaining, if I'm complaining, I better at least have started thinking about a solution.
Yeah.
Because we don't just get to complain. We need to do something about it.
Yeah.
But as far as what men can do, we've got to get back in touch with our identity and our values. And I think a good door to that is exploring, what do we care about? And so I would say a man needs to be journaling. I'm not dogmatic. Like I don't journal every day. Right. But I'd love to. I think it's a good goal. But I would say if you're not journaling, pick up a journal. And a quick exercise you can do is the shadow and the summit.
Yeah, spell that out. What does that mean? The shadow is what?
The shadow and the summit. Yeah, so sit down with a pen and paper and write out, reflect back to, when was the last time I felt fully alive? When was I on that summit? Hands out on the mountaintop, being like, life is good. And list out what was good about it. What made you feel alive? What were you feeling in that moment? What had happened leading up to that moment? Secondly, think back to the last time you were angry, sad, mad, all these things in the shadow, and list out what brought you there. What were you feeling when you're in that desperation? And think back what triggered that. And then overlap those, because when we write down those descriptors, the shadow and the summit, those are your values.
Right.
What pisses you off, right? For me, when somebody lies to me, pisses me off. Why? It's a value. Because if you and I don't have truth between us, then we don't have a relationship. And I like you, Rob, and like you and I want to have this friendship and relationship. And so if we don't have truth, we don't have anything, right?
Right.
But when we have truth, we have everything on the summit.
Yeah.
Yes, I've got truth.
I love that.
Yes. Yeah. So the men that do this exercise, they'll start seeing these things come out of both of those. Because what pisses us off and what makes us feel alive, those are our values. That's what we deeply hold dear.
Absolutely.
Unknowingly, most of the time, most men that I work with are like, oh, yeah, that's why I got frustrated when this happened.
Right. Well,
But when we bring
it's such
awareness, now we can
a reflection of your values. I mean, the things you enjoy. It's easy to go, man, when I snag that trout, it's just like, wham, I love achievement. I love doing things and learning things and going after it and then hitting them. But the flip side of that, I love that you threw the shadow in there, because it's like, man, somebody said once, the things you see in other people that make you angry are typically something you don't like about yourself. And so you're not living up to that value that you hold. So I love that. You just gave us, men, do not miss this, 3 really, really good concrete takeaways and calls to action is what we call them. Number 1, live in community. And I'm just going to throw a plug in here. And I know we've had this, ad for Sherpa, our Ascent men's communities. If you are not in a community, you are missing it. Go to sherpaunlimited.com/ascent. Ascent men's communities are very simply this, where you can get around other men who are moving the same direction you are. Maybe they're in the C-suite. We can put a group together like that. Maybe you're all like, millennial dads. You're right in the middle of it like Jeremiah is. Or maybe you're a Gen Xer like me and your kids you're like, what's next? What's happening next? Or maybe you're a young Gen Z guy just starting out. Man, get in community, because Jeremiah is right in the middle of that. You lose like yourself and not investing into yourself, man. You're like this eventually you're the straw that broke the camel's back. You just keep throwing more and more on, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm out of gas. I got nothing to give. And so what are you and how are you investing in yourself? Great takeaway. Number two is establishing your values. What do you value? Listing out what is a Shaw, what is a Stout, what is a Smith, what is a Brown, establish that stuff for yourself. And number three, know what those values are. I love that. So thanks, man. Those were great. And I didn't want to just fly by them because those are the anchoring points of really what can make this conversation really concrete. So
yeah, and I hope men take you up on that of just picking up the phone call and plugging into community, because so many men, we have this ego of I can do it on my own.
Yeah,
and it's the reality is like if you walk the trail, you're going to see a lot of bodies on the trail.
100%.
And those are men that thought they could do it alone.
100%. And our logo for our Ascent Men's community, it's a group of mountain climbers, a group of mountaineers who are in the snow who are going together. And that's the whole idea around the Sherpa, is that we walk together with you. So let me ask you a question. To get a hold of me, men know it's pretty easy. The next stage at SherpaUnlimited.com. If a man is like, I got to talk to Jeremiah, I've got this team thing, I've got this, man, I need to dig in. How can a man get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm really active on LinkedIn, just Jeremiah Shaw, Grovity Leadership. It's a Steamboat Springs, Colorado. That's the Jeremiah. There's not a lot of Jeremiahs out there. Or you can go to our website, grovityleadership.com, Grovity. When we first named it, by the way, my dad said, "Hey, you spelled gravity wrong." Right. I said, "No, we made up a word, Dad." But yeah,
he gets it. He's a therapist. He's like, okay, I can see that. That's always what he does. He does things a little different. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I've got a bunch of we could talk all day about that.
I'm sure we can. Yeah, I love that. And we'll put that in the show notes, grovityleadership.com. Man, Jeremiah, I want to thank you for being part of what we're doing here. I appreciate you, what you're doing. A friend introduced the two of us, and we had lunch together. I was like, man, this guy's got his act together. He's heading a good way, and I love what he's about. So thanks for being part of what we're doing. And man, until our next episode, may you be a man who lives a life of purpose, born out of a deep sense of his identity, of who he is as a man created in God's image. Whether you know him and you're walking with him or struggling with him, or you don't at all, would you lean into that? Would you seek that out? And until we talk again, have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time. Man, there's a loneliness and isolation epidemic going on in our world today. 50% of men report frequent feelings of loneliness. Another 50% report not having any close friends. And 70% of men report not having a significant relationship or a conversation that goes beyond the surface level in the last week. Life doesn't have to be that way. In fact, Sherpa Unlimited has come along and said, we want to help solve that problem. And I want you to picture your world like this. Picture your world where you have other strong men around you who are heading the same direction you are. Not just yes men in your life, or drinking buddies, or poker playing buddies, or something like that, but men where you had the opportunity to grow, to really foster the kind of life that you want, to grow that internal world that allows you to be the man you need to be at work, at home, in your community. Men who were there to challenge you, but also lift you up when you fall. And we all do. I want you to check out Sherpa Unlimited's opportunity that we have coming up. They're called Ascent Men's Communities. These are bi-weekly groups that meet literally anywhere in the world. You have to invest in these. They're not just free, but it's very affordable. You'll see. Less than the cost of a couple pizzas, and certainly less than the cost of your gym membership. Go to SherpaUnlimited.com/ascent. We'll see you in one of our Ascent Men's communities very soon.
Thanks for joining us on the Next Stage podcast for men with Rob Stout. The Next Stage helps men live with purpose, born out of identity, as men made in God's image who are shaping this world for good. The Next Stage is a production of Sherpa Unlimited Coaching for Men, based in Denver, Colorado in the United States. Learn more at sherpaunlimited.com/thenextstage or follow Sherpa Unlimited on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. We love feedback. Please send your feedback, questions, or requests for future content to this email, thenextstage@sherpaunlimited.com. Again, thenextstage@sherpaunlimited.com. The Next Stage distributes episodes every 2 weeks on Wednesday mornings. The Next Stage taps the wisdom of the ancient scriptures. And if you don't have a copy of the Bible, we can help you fix that. First, you can visit any public library and check one out. Or visit an online or local bookstore. Alternatively, just about any Bible-believing church would be happy to give you a Bible for a nominal price, or even free. And while you're there, make a personal introduction to the pastor or his staff, and consider attending services there this Sunday. Finally, you can just download a free Bible app called YouVersion for your smartphone. Whether you have an Apple iPhone, Google Android phone, or something else, go to your phone's app store and search YOU Version and select the YouVersion Bible. Also, you can find a link for the YouVersion Bible app in the show notes of today's podcast. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks.